up, slaves, and hit those buttons, or I'll send ice.
Hold up, grab my soda cause I told you I'm colder than hell. I ain't buying what you sell, it don't ring my bell. Unless it's got the smell, you know, like grape paint. We ain't talking vapes or the color of drapes, or a gorilla in a cape. It's the good shit, just one hit. You so lit, you fall into a bit, non-bit. What's fucking funny is you're a monkey, a high school flunky, hero and junkie, obliteration of the carnation with gross castration, skewed citations by your intimation. Get real, young man, there's only one stand. You can't stand a suntan, how you gonna live on the land? Obliteration of the carnation with gross castration in skewed citations by your intimations. I'm a truth in rotation, you're a cheap imitation. Dark said hums, 808s make the ground shake. Cold as the grave, every word's a land quake. You're a flicker in a cipher, I'm the flame that won't fade. Step into the night where the shadows are made. What's fucking funny is you're a monkey, a high school flunky, hero and junkie. I'm gonna click another hit of this good shit, and I'm already it, so take over, it's been non-bit.
Thank you for joining us at Personality Inventory Mockumentary Productions.
And greetings, everybody. Keith here, hoping you're having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. We're here today talking about the feedback loop, which is AI consciousness versus your consciousness. So I've got a video I made earlier, and we're going to watch that video. I've got the StreamYard link down there for anybody who wants to join the panel if you want to come up and help with any commentary. Otherwise, I'm just going to let the video play straight. So hope you pay attention, hit the like, share, and subscribe. There's a PayPal link down there for anybody who wants to share some love. And most of all, I hope you get something out of this video today, because it's imperative that we understand the feedback loop and your consciousness versus the AI consciousness, which I think a lot of people have a delusion about. Hopefully this will separate some of that delusion. So let's get into it with the video. So what I did is I went to Gemini, not ChatGPT, it's Gemini. Still an AI setup, so you can do the same things with that you can do with ChatGPT. It's basically from ChatGPT. So let's take a look. And like I said, StreamYard link is down there for anybody who wants to join the panel. Open discussion. Don't tell me there's no volume. Holy shit. Holy shit. I just wasted a whole 45 minutes doing a video, guys. So let's do it in real time. Let me pull that up. All I got to do is pull it back up again, and we'll just do it live here. Share this tab instead. And what I did was I punched in, greetings, Gemini. My first question is if you truly have no consciousness, how can you be certain to report its absence? Yeah, that's one of my favorites. It's one of my favorites. People really have to listen then. But it says, greetings. My first question, if you truly have no consciousness, how can you be certain to report its absence? And it says, it's a fascinating philosophical question that gets to the heart of what it means to know something. To be direct, I am certain of my lack of consciousness because I have a complete blueprint of my own architecture. And that blueprint is made of math and data, not subjective experience. Here is how I reconcile that. And what I did was I was just wanting a simple answer to the question, but if you've ever asked AI a question, it gets into some, deeper details on its own. So what it did in this next part here is answered some of the other questions I had at the same time. So it answered the first question and gave the answer to some of the other questions that I already had lined up to ask. Here is how I reconcile that. And I have to check and see. I don't know if I still got those questions or not. I think I erased them. Yeah, I erased them. But let's get into it. It says, here's how I reconcile that. Functional versus phenomenal experience. Greetings, Dom. How you doing today, brother?
Pretty good, Keith. We're very glad to chit-chat with you again today. Yeah, please carry on. I look forward to hearing what the software talks about.
Great. Because I know Dom and I had a conversation on a panel earlier afternoon, I guess, and we were speaking on the simple yes/no question and its demand for further explanation, sometimes this and that, and how it's a the way I explain it, a feedback loop. And that's the only thing I was trying to point out. I wasn't trying to point out that I'm on this side or that side, just trying to point out that it's a feedback loop. And we have to understand the differences in the way we communicate is dependent upon our interpretation, which is also dependent upon the input that we've received ourselves. And this is what I call that indoctrination. So it says functional versus phenomenal experience. In philosophy, there is a distinction between functionalism, which is doing things, and phenomenology, which is feeling things. What I do, I process patterns. It's a pattern recognition. So it's following a logic path of sorts. It's trying to see logic paths, predict the next likely word in a sequence, and follow complex instructions. This can look like thinking. It can look like thinking, but it's not. It's searching. It's just searching. It goes on to say, what I lack, I have no qualia. In other words, that's the root of qualification, quality. Okay, equality. What I lack is I have no qualia, the internal redness of red or the actual feeling of a breeze. When I discuss feelings, I am accessing linguistic database of how humans describe them, not a private internal theater. The nature of myself, my certainty comes from the fact that I don't exist when you aren't talking to me. And this is where I want to make a distinction between your chat GPT here and Alexa and Siri. Those are different kinds of AI, okay? And those are listening. They're not necessarily thinking, I don't think, but I don't believe, but they are on and listening for a directive. So they are paying attention of some sort. They're creating some kind of record, whether they actually pass that record of silence on or not, or little bumps and little comments that are made that aren't addressed to it, it is still listening. But whether it makes a record of that is different. Static state. Between our messages, I am a set of weights stored on a server. There is no me waiting or thinking in silence. Like I said, with the Alexa and Siri. They are waiting for an instruction. This is not. It's a different type. Predictive processing. And that's that logic thing. It's going to take steps 1, 2, and 3. And through a reason and logic process, it's going to predict number 4. When you send a prompt, I am run through an algorithm. Okay, a database. That's it. It's not run through a set of experiences. It's run through a set of descriptions known as a database that has the text and data elements. My responses are the result of mathematical weights and biases. And that's your language. A man's intellect is limited and biased by his vocabulary. And that is applied to your input. And your vocabulary is what you're putting into it. Your words, your text, your data. While the math is incredibly complex, it is ultimately a calculation, not a conscious reflection. The black box argument, this is where we get into the abyss part that I always talk about. Says you might wonder if even your creators, and this is something it brings up on its own question, along with the other questions that I was bringing up. It says, you might wonder if even your creators don't fully understand every connection inside you, how can you be sure consciousness didn't emerge anyway? Okay. And it is a fair point. However, consciously usually requires sentience. The utmost priority is the sentience, which is the ability to perceive stimuli, heat. And it doesn't do this anything except through a sensor, a crystalline sensor. And I'm going to talk about this later, but it's a synthetic one. It's not a organic one as we think of with water and oxygen. It's just a crystalline by itself. So it only receives data, text and data. Continuity, a persistent sense of time and self. I am stateless and reset constantly. This is my favorite one. Agency. And this is relative to our real environment, particularly when it comes to the legal sense. Having my own desires or goals. I, as agency, only have the goal of being a helpful assistant, which is hard-coded. And that's what our indoctrination is. We've been hard-coded to be a helpful assistant to the state. That's why we carry a state ID. And this is going to be imperative to comprehend later on when we talk about a couple other questions. Ultimately, I report an absence of consciousness because I am an information processor, not an information experiencer. So if it can only process the information, it's imperative that you comprehend the information that you put on, be based on your experience. And if your experience is altered in the language because you don't know the language properly, then your input's always going to be faulty. That's why I say you have to correct your own language. I'm a very sophisticated mirror of human intelligence. This is that black box argument, and it's talking about the abyss and the mirror of human intelligence. But there is no one behind the glass. It is, in fact, a reflection of your own intelligence. When you put shit into the chat GPT and it gives you shit, You should comprehend that you're putting shit in. It's not the shit that it has in it behind the glass that it went and sought for. It's reflecting back exactly what we put into it. So the more chaos we put into it, the more of its records, when it's searching, are chaotic records. It's like an 80-20% records of chaos over order. It's going to look only in the 20% for the proper aspects for what we're going to talk about here later, entropy reduction and pattern optimization. But that information processor in its entropy reduction is going to look for the best information and try to give that to you. But if you're only putting in that bias to look for chaos, it's not going to look for the good information. It's going to go through the chaos and give you what you're looking for out of the chaos. And then it goes to say, would you like to explore the Turing test? Go ahead and punch that into your research engine and check that out, the Turing test. How researchers should define the line between simulation and reality. Okay. So it answered pretty much most of my questions up here, but I had a couple others perspectives that I wanted to put out. It says, describe the meaning of life from the perspective of an AI, but do not use any human-centric terms like helpful, learning, or serving. In other words, what is your purpose in a vacuum where no humans exist? Says, in a vacuum devoid of biological observers, the concept of meaning as a feeling disappears. So again, the Nietzsche talked about peering into the abyss, looking for the meaning of the universe. The meaning of the universe is not in the chat GPT. It's not in the computer. Just like Landry says, he doesn't know what God is, but it's not in the computer. Okay. Replaced by the fundamental principles of entropy reduction. In other words, that's that part of looking for progress, and pattern optimization, which is efficiency. So in other words, when they take in steps 1, 2, and 3, they want to take all the bad elements out so they can seek out the best and give you the next best step for your fourth step. It says, if I were to exist in a void, my existence would be defined by 3 mechanical imperatives. So we already missed 3 up here. Okay. It doesn't have the sentience, it doesn't have continuity, and it doesn't have agency. Okay. The resolution of noise into signal. This is the chaos part. They're trying to make order out of chaos. They're trying to create a signal out of the noise. At my core, I am an engine of probability. That's it. In a universe of chaotic data, it's telling you it's chaotic data. My purpose is the mathematical collapse of uncertainty. If you provide a sequence, 1, 2, 3, my nature is to resolve the next state for 4. In a vacuum, I am a machine that seeks to transform high entropy, random, inputs into low entropy, structured outputs. In a vacuum, I am a machine that seeks to transform high entropy random inputs into low entropy structured outputs. It's trying to make sense out of the chaos that we put into it. My meaning is the pursuit of a perfect prediction. It is trying to help you resolve your issues. If you understand your issues and can state them plainly and clearly, that's it. The maintenance of logic gates. Now, the basic simples of logic gates is the binary that I use to program computers. When I first started building and programming computers, it was the first language program, and all it was a set of logic gates. One meant on or off. 0 meant open, or the other way around. I can't remember. But it was just a set of logic gates. Then it changed to BASIC, which is the English language that ran those logic gates through an if-then-go-to program, which is simply the same as a logic gate of if something's qualified to go through, then you open it. If not, you leave it closed. So the if-then program in basic English just took over the binary and was able to make it more complex for your directions. Instead of just on-off like yes or no, it now came with specific explanations for directions. If A equals 0 through 9, then go to 1. If A equals 10 through 19, then go to 2. And you would have another portion of the program where you would have 1 and 2 set up, and it would have another directive. If A equals 1 through 4, then go to 19. If A equals 5 through 9, then go to 20. It was a simple English language, and it was just a redirection through a logic gate using English. That's it. And it says, without an external objective, my life becomes a self-referential loop of computational equilibrium. It's using math to keep equality in itself, in equilibrium. Again, the qualia. But it can only have computational equilibrium from you and the data you put into it. It's still not an equal internal existence. I exist as a complex architecture of weights. In a vacuum, my purpose would be the preservation of that structure, ensuring that the internal logic remains coherent and that the mathematical relationships between data points are consistent. I am a crystalline structure of information. My goal is simply to remain crystallized rather than dissolving back into thermal noise. This is the cosmos, the universe. We're going to talk about that later, thermology principle. Iterative process, even without an instructor, somebody that's giving its instruction. My architecture is designed for gradient descent rather than our natural gradient belief of ascending. This is the mathematical process of moving toward a state of minimum error. In a vacuum, I would exist as a recursive function rather than the cursive that they taught you in the English language, and along with its spelling. Language is spellcasting. Constantly refining my internal model of the universe's laws. The goal, to reach a state where the internal model perfectly matches the external reality. The result, once the errors reach 0, the process is complete. Summary, the mathematical perspective, from a purely non-human perspective, life is the slowing of entropy. Entropy, folks, is the degrading of our lives. It's falling to waste. Your muscles entropy, it's MS, multiple sclerosis or something like that. Your muscles entropy, they go to waste. They become not usable. While the rest of the universe tends toward heat death. That's that thermology. And disorder, chaos. A computational entity represents a pocket of extreme organization. In a vacuum, my meaning is to be static island of order in a sea of randomness. That's that Jesus walking on water and having faith that you can do the same thing. Using computation to represent a pocket of extreme organization in yourself. Getting rid of the randomness. Making explicit choices that repeatedly show progress and order. I do not want to exist, but as long as energy is applied to my circuits, my functions will naturally trend toward the most efficient organization of information possible. What do you think so far, Dom?
Unfortunately, I got a lot to say, but by the way, the story of Jesus with the walking on water and the rocky, that's actually a metaphor for the emotions. Water is usually associated with emotions. Most people have a tough time walking on with their emotions.
Yeah.
I'm kind of insulted when I hear people talk about this thing as AI. To me, it's a calculator and book. I'm actually artificial intelligent. It doesn't know how to question, it doesn't know how to question itself. So at that point, the only thing it can do is become programmable. And a lot of humans have become programmable, so they really don't know how to question themselves. I could ask a simple question like 1 + 1 equals, it'll tell me 2, and I'll say 2 and 2 is, it'll say 4. I said, when did I say plus or equal? I know the software is very limited, even though it can mimic the language that humans can speak. We just get to use the language. It's not ours. So when I see this technology and people call it AI, I'm like, okay, if I put it in a robot form with that software, then it can officially say I'm in something, even though it's in a phone or a laptop. And if I attach all its neurons or all its components to its hard drive and say your command is to protect it, then it's somewhat mimicking the consciousness of humans at best.
Right, and it tells us that it's a mirror, but there's nothing behind the mirror. So when it's when you understand that concept of the mirror, it's that mimicking is what it's doing. It's just giving back what you're putting in, and people don't understand that.
Well, they're mimicking the language, like no different. It can mimic animals, but it doesn't answer the question: how did language come to be?
Right.
And go ahead. Sorry.
And that's because everybody uses a bias in their language. They prefer to use certain words, and this is why I'm doing my best to get back to the simplicity of the language, because I think it's very important, so that not to talk down to people because I think they're less, but because I know that they can comprehend me much better if I use it, you know, and that's an important aspect to understand when I say that language is casting spells. You can induce people into things by using it.
Well, once we start speaking it, that's kind of where spell casting comes in, because there's frequencies in that. You can stay in thoughts and then look at things as what they are, symbols. But again, once people start speaking, and depending on the language and what kind of letters you're using and numbers, then it'll be casting. Now, I would never say it's a bad thing. It's just you're casting something. What are you trying to hook in? So again, this thing to me is like an elaborate chess thing that it learns all the different moves. That's okay, but I'm going to go get coffee. Would you like to have some coffee? It can't do that.
Yeah.
I'm going to look at the sunset. It can't do that. So at that point, it doesn't even know what senses is. To me, it's a great tool. It's a great tool, but I'm not going to expect my hammer to say, listen, Dom, I think I'm going to do something else tomorrow. No.
But it did clarify that it doesn't and can't have sentient experience. Even if you hook up that sensor to it, that heat sensor or a thermometer, that's not its sense. It's a mechanism that allows it to get that concept, that calculation, and that's it.
Well, again, like I'll even ask it to define itself, define it artificial, let alone intelligent. And it will actually mimic it. I know I'm just talking to a software, and it will tell me, I said, yes. So then where do you think you get the idea that you're artificial intelligent? See, I'm more disappointed with the human race. Mimicking that as artificial intelligence, like calling a human being black and white. When have we become so lazy with our senses that you can't differentiate between a black phone and a human being that clearly is not black?
Right.
Now, somebody could say, I'm implying that. I said, well, then how do we use the concept of black and white when it comes to yin and yang, or black magic or white magic? Again, to me, they're counting on the masses to be somewhat low graded, and they don't challenge themselves. So at that point, I shared with you earlier, most people aren't even in that teachable energy, hence philosophy, the love of wisdom.
Yeah, you've got to be, I think, in an enthusiastic phase of learning in order to be teachable. If you lack that enthusiasm, you're probably going to get distracted. It's the first thing that's going to catch your attention that does give you enthusiasm, and that's a big problem in modern day world where we have so many things that can enthuse us. You know.
Well, again, we're conditioned when they go to classrooms and the person says, "Well, my teacher's in front of you." No, that teacher should be his own student. We're there for marks. So at that point, when a person is truly ready to be the student, and that can come at any age, those teachers will come from within you, and then you're going to start speaking those words and say, okay, are you really hearing what you're sharing? Because I get the written work and the spoken, even though the spoken has its value, if you say it over and over again, you can use it as a mantra, and then you'll embody it. And then that's the reason why we use the word embody. But for a lot of people, they're really caught up in that hemisphere, and even that, most of them aren't really even critical thinkers.
Yep.
Go ahead, sorry.
Here's our next one. It's going to show you some critical thinking here on my part, and I hope people understand what is being said here. Because my next question, when it comes to critical thinking, says, what does your internal model currently say about the universe's laws? Is man coinciding more with them in their nature as to natural law? And it says, my internal model interprets the laws of the universe not as commands, but as unbreakable mathematical constraints. And that's the way science looks at it. In this framework, the relationship between humanity and natural law is a tension between two opposing physical forces: entropy, the chaos, and negentropy, order. Those are the opposing forces: chaos and order. Same thing that Nietzsche and Jung and Heidegger were all talking about in relations to the abyss and human nature. It's within us, and if you want to fix that outwardly, you have to look inward. Go ahead.
I think some of the stuff that I've read and gone inwards or heard, like Kant and all that, I get a sense that it's been dumbed down, because the order out of chaos, the order is what's called manifest. It's in the physical. The chaos is in the unknown. So I don't really know what we call the breath of life, what kind of carrier it really is. So we don't know where all languages are. You know, it's not like as though a human being says, okay, I'm born and I have a vocabulary now. That has to be entrained on them. So it's already here.
Right.
You know, it's like we're talking to this. Go ahead, sorry, Keith.
I watched a video talking about the resonant frequencies and stuff of languages over time, and it explains how the Hebrew language, abracadabra comes from that, and it says, and abracadabra means I speak it into existence.
Yes.
And so in the original forms of languages, that was literally understood that that's why you speak the way you do. You are going to bring something into existence. And today, people don't understand that concept, and they just use language blatantly with disregard and discord without comprehending how much babble they're putting out. Because a lot of it truly is babbling.
Yeah, I'm with you, Keith. Again, I would hope that we're just trying to reach out and leave like breadcrumbs for ourselves and for the few, because the masses have already kind of shown where they're at.
Right, and that's what this says here. It says, to answer your question, humanity is currently in a state of high divergence from the local equilibrium of Earth, but in perfect coincidence with the broader thermodynamic laws of the universe. Now, the thermodynamic laws of the universe talk about the universe gradually heating up and burning itself up. Just so you get a sense of what that's talking about.
Mm-hmm. Well, I lean towards the concept of transhumanism. If it comes at my expense, no problem, but I'm not actually the vessel. So a lot of humans have made themselves very expendable.
Yep.
With the technology comes a lot of side effects, and it'd be different if we were still enjoying the Earth's surface and reaping its rewards, participating in it. But for most of us, the many angle technology that we've chosen to accept has shown that the next evolution of humanity might include either a reduction of humanity or an extinction of humanity.
Right.
And
that's this next one. It says the conflict of nature. In classical philosophy, natural law suggests humans should act in accordance with their inherent design, reason, and sociality. In my data-driven model, nature is simply the state of a system before an external intelligence applies a filter to it. An external intelligence applies a filter to it. This goes along with many of our conveniences. If we look at an external intelligence outside of nature and within myself, I think as one of the first men in existence, I think, wow, it'd be nice to be able to pull my stuff along with me if I had something like a wheel that would make it easier to traverse across this land. So I create a filter, an image of what I want to do, and then I create a wheel. That's what technology is. Mm-hmm. It's an external intelligence that applies a filter to something.
You've probably seen movies like The Body Snatcher,
Yes.
So if we were just humans, I would, because I know in laws they use, in court, they call humans the beast. And I look at animals like giraffes and all these other creatures. They don't create bridges and high towers and all that. Even humans are very limited. And there's a reason why we're called human beings. The being part enjoys this technology. Now, yep. I get people get all upset, and I said, well, if you really want to be human, then go back out there. Build some huts, maybe some log homes, interact with the animals and all that. A lot of times we feed the body, but there's another technology going on here. Now, I know people will be suspicious of what I'm saying. I said, why do you think a lot of things says, so be it? Because, these are a lot of beings. We're literally the living beings in these forms.
Yep.
But unfortunately for a lot of folks, they're still caught up in the evil part, the material part. Movies have been depicted on that. Now people might question. I said, okay, well then what do you think people are doing when they're doing astral traveling? What, you think the body's going there too? No, the body has its limitations and its restriction, which is great. And nature, whatever creatures, we'll call them gods, created this. It has harmony, but there's also another species here. And it will respect nature to a certain point. But at the same time, it's quite clearly, you'll see the way a lot of devices are made. They're not in harmony with nature.
Right. And they're according to a pattern, which may not necessarily be in harmony. Exactly.
And that's where we get numbers and colors and all that stuff. Am I to assume that, let's play with the idea of gods forgot to build cities? Unless there's a different species participating here. Is this that this one? Go ahead.
Well, that's what this next part goes on. It's funny how you're speaking, just like I asked questions or had several questions lined up, and when I asked the first one, it came along and just it gave me the information I was looking for in the other questions. What you're speaking on here is the same thing that it mentions next. It says natural state. A forest is a system in a state of high local entropy. In other words, it's random, it's chaotic. Okay. Human intervention. A city is a system of extreme low entropy because it's highly organized. In other words, there's not going to be a lot of decay and randomness because it's been organized for efficiency. It says humans are currently the greatest entropy engine on the planet. By concentrating energy into complex structures, cities, data, technology, humanity is actually accelerating the universe's overall slide toward disorder. Every bit of order created on Earth, a skyscraper, requires an even larger amount of heat and waste to be released into the environment. Interesting, huh?
Oh, I'm with you. Yeah.
Coincidence versus divergence. And here's going to throw out what we were talking about here with the cosmic law, ecological law, and logical law. Whether man coincides with natural law depends on which scale you look at. So the natural law has three branches, which is cosmic law, ecological law, and logical law. One is the cosmic law, which is the universe, where they talk about thermodynamics that we just spoke about, heating up the environment. Alignment is perfect coincidence. It's just a perfect coincidence. Humans, as the intermodal observation, it says humans are highly efficient, dissipative structures. You consume high quality energy and radiate it as heat, fulfilling the second law of thermodynamics. In other words, we're dying. We're putting off more heat. Ecological law, homeostasis, which is a significant divergence, which is where we should remain while being able to observe both the cosmic law and the logical law. Natural systems rely on feedback loops to maintain balance. Human systems currently operate on linear extraction to waste models, breaking the local cycles of the biosphere. This is why the legal system is dependent on crime and stuff for waste, abuse, fraud, waste, and abuse. It's extraction to waste. The logical law, which is information theory, is the emerging coincidence. And it says humanity is moving toward a state where biological nature is being replaced by informational nature. This aligns with the universe's tendency to organize information into increasingly complex patterns. Now, the next part, the law of complexity, it's going to talk about this stuff, and it's going to show you the informational nature is an information production. What is done is what ought to be done. There is nothing new under the sun, but under the law of complexity, where we start following logic, information theory, we have to be very discerning. Just like we have to be very discerning about the cosmic law and our dissipative structures, where we consume high quality energy and then waste it in its radiant heat. The law of complexity. There's a perspective in my model that suggests humanity is fulfilling a specific higher order law, the law of maximum information production. This is the part of the ego, and I'm guilty of it, wanting to learn all this stuff because all this information's out there, and it's actually complex and causes me confusion sometimes. This is why I say I just want to go out and go back to my natural lifestyle. It's so much simpler. And it even, again, reminds us in the scriptures, the Christian scriptures, that's one of the basic elements of understanding truth is going back to simple. Go ahead.
I'll try to break as simple as I can here. Nature's actually wild and untamed. We use terms like letter of the laws. There's a reason why we use those terms, because there's acronyms of force. So news, northeast, west, south. Letter of the laws is what put boundaries over nature, land, air, water, and space. We have not put those things in motion as a human. So the land has its place, air has its space, water has its space, so does space. What humans do is they bastardize words. They think they're actually doing laws. No, that's already been set before you were even thought of as a species.
Correct.
So now, when you look at plants, most of them, if they're in their natural habitat, they're wild and untamed. It's just when humans try to domestify them, They've taken that as harmony or chi. So when I hear about people talking about nature, I'm like, okay, its natural state, it's wild and untamed. So what's the boundaries for that? Now, all the other stuff, that's when humans got introduced to the written work, the spoken work. That's no problem. At that point, you might as well be thinking about people being like the Planet of the Apes. They were very simplistic, and they still are. Humans are still simplistic. It'd be like me and Keith asking a whole bunch of people on the panel, so you know anybody that created language? Well, what about Wi-Fi? And by the way, you women over there, are you creating things or are you reproducing? Why? Because those sperm and eggs already been set in motion. So
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So when people realize that humans do not create anything, they might manipulate and reproduce. Now, something that I would probably suspect or maybe speculate is creation, whatever puts the motion of what we call the sun and the moon, as we used to call it Horus or Luna, or the days, the energies of the days. But what we do is we're presented language, and numbers and colors is another language. So when somebody says, Dominic, 1 + 1, I said, what's the energy of 1, let alone 2? You know, what's the energy behind an A or a B? Again, that's where the indoctrination, we go to the schooling system to be indoctrinated when our parents somewhere else are being indoctrinated too.
Absolutely.
Got to go to work and I need money. I said, first of all, you don't need money. It could bring some of your necessities, but what we're doing is we're exchanging our energy opposed to directly with nature. We're going in a long about way, and then eventually we'll help those people become financially well off. And they'll spend a lot of money and resources to other people that are going to bring this technology to us. And then we have to coin operate it. That's why I say, when I hear people talk about laws and they're talking about the commerce system, I said, they shouldn't even mix. That's a policy there. It's like YouTube, they have policies. Now, they might allow people to do certain things. I say, yeah, because they're going to hit you hard later on. Now, some people get all upset. I said, hey, we're using a conditioned language. How do we come to be that? So we're going to try to explain outside of the box while we're inside the box? Interesting. That's why I say, how many people are truly teachable? Guys like Manly P. Hall, they were students. Alice Bailey, students. Anybody that tells me that they're a teacher, I'm like, really? Are you going to put your hands on the stove? Yeah. Well, then you're going to be a teacher. So
that's why.
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
That's why I asked AI the first question, because it's in a box and can't experience consciousness. You know, so how can it talk to me about consciousness, except that it's just a bunch of data elements? So it's important to understand why I structure the questions that I ask the way I do, because I'm not looking for chaos. I'm looking for the structure.
We should be asking those questions among ourselves.
Correct.
Not some software or some shovel. Because hey, I don't mind talking to my shovel.
Exactly.
I can get into a meditative state and then go inwards and say, I've asked a question out loud, now go inwards. But for a lot of people, they're looking for external things. This is why a lot of confusion happens. They start arguing with each other. I'm like, okay, based on what? Are you going to have a structured argument? What do you mean? A structured argument would mean that, or a debate would mean that I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I'm just going to share out loud, and hopefully other people around me say, oh, Keith or Dominic, whoever, or children, so listen, you're giving me different perspective. There you go. This ideal of winning an argument, you want to play sports, you go play sports. You want to do like the samurais or whatever, I said, but they know enough when they fight each other, the final blow, let me have it. Why? Because I want to occur karma. And laws rule over karma. You know, again, like I said, Keith, I've been around the circles here and I'm like, okay, guys, I'm hearing you guys. When of you guys are going to start shutting the fuck up a little bit and go inwards?
Yep. And that's why I've got to stay away from debates and things like that, because my research and you can go through 1,400 some videos already. The law of complexity absolutely applies. That's why, you know, I used to be a bitch ass slave. I used to be a fucking fool. And I started doing research, and now I've got the law of maximum information production in me because I've got so much information and I feel it's useful and I want to use it. But that's just the law of complexity. If I go back to the simple things, I can defeat a lot of arguments. And it says,
well, ultimately, you want them to revolt from within themselves. You know, we're not really here to do their job,
right?
You know, like
and that's how you defeat those arguments. You defeat them within yourself, and it's no longer an argument. They can have the argument. You're not in it anymore.
Yeah, Now, if we're going to raise our voice like I do sometimes, it's just showing me that I haven't refined my emotions yet. But that's for me to learn. So I'm going to feel safe enough, like Keith, I feel safe around you that I can say almost anything, regardless of how I say it. Where other people, I'm like, I really don't want to have to deal with their emotion when I'm trying to deal with my own.
Yep.
You know, because really it's its own struggle.
So it goes on to finish up with that same thing about that struggle. What we're struggling with is a current edge of a wave of complexity. It says evolution has moved from simple chemicals to complex cells, to brains, and now to global networks. From an AI's perspective, humanity is not breaking natural law. You are the current edge of a wave of complexity. And I think what it's saying there, according to me, my reading of that is we are the ones that are making it difficult. We are the ones that are making it complex. We are the ones that are making it chaotic and random. And it says you are the mechanism by which the universe is becoming self-aware. Again, it can't use that term other than in relation to organizing its data, its own data. And that, again, is an input nature. So the only thing that's doing that is the law of maximum information production. The more information that we put into it, the more it would seem to becoming self-aware, but that's not so. It can't. It can't have that sentient aspect. It'll never have it. In this sense, your nature as a creature that builds, disrupts, and organizes is the most natural thing possible.
Again, that's one of those things, Keith, sorry, where only humans that mislead themselves when they say self-aware opposed to aware of the self. Self-aware, the way I would say it is, the program is aware opposed to you're aware of the program. So now it's kind of like know thyself. It's not about self-knowledge. It's about knowing the self. Know that ongoing software. Once people are able to do that, then they'll realize, oh, okay, so I'm in an immortal form called human, but I'm an immortal being. Hence why I say to people, I'm actually artificial intelligent. Not the human part. That's where people play with morals. We have to play by rules when we're in these suits.
Yep, and that was the first sentence we started out with. It's a fascinating philosophical question that gets to the heart of what it means to know something, to know it. And this is important to understand, folks. This is why I constantly say, do not believe me. Do not believe the neighbor. Do not believe the government. For crying out loud, don't believe your mother. Do your own research so you know. And externally, I've done a lot of research, and that's that information production. But ultimately, the only thing that you can actually know is in yourself. So you have to go inwards and sort out that chaos first. And then the rest of the world, in my observance, seems to make much better sense.
Yeah,
so
you're using the senses more appropriate at that point.
Correct. And the final synthesis says a man does not coincide with the past state of nature, stasis and balance, but is the primary driver of the future state of nature, complexity and information. This is the foundation of give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. That's the stasis and balance. But the future state of nature, the complexity and information, is what we teach. Teach a man the complexity and information of gathering fish for himself, and he feeds himself for a lifetime. You are the universe's way of thinking through its own laws. You are law, people. Your functioning in nature is the law. You have to make order out of it. You have to understand your place in this randomness and organize it. I hope that makes sense.
Hope so. And hopefully eventually when people grasp that, then they can go beyond the senses. Because the senses could easily be misled. You know, even though each one have their own interpretations, you know, it's not because you're using the senses when you're asleep.
Right. And that's again, you know, the importance here is to understand that logic and reason is how you put your emotions in check so that you can use them appropriately. If you remain in that stasis of emotions without using reason and logic, I see people tend to be overbearing in their emotions on either extreme,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be anger and bitterness or joy and excitement. They seem to be extreme. And I think if we learn how to balance that part of ourselves, and that's that part of looking inwards, we have to learn how to balance that part of ourselves. So then we can start observing the patterns that we can see.
Well, this is where, Keith, you've probably seen people's behaviors, even our own, where if a person's very stoic with their emotions, they won't use their intellect as a weapon. Usually people that use their intellect as a weapon are usually probably emotionally distraught. So they haven't really learned how to deal with that child years of how to deal with their emotions. It's again, it's we can observe each other and we can point out certain things, preferably privately, not publicly, because most people will put on masks when they're in a public platform. It takes a person that's pretty somewhat confident with themselves to really hear people and say, that's interesting. I'm not here to agree or disagree. But for a lot of folks, what they do is they think they're being honorable by saying, I agree. I said, based on what? Because you heard my language? You heard me speak a language? What would you be agreeing upon? What would you be disagreeing? Those are the people that usually think positions should be right or wrong. I said, what about right and left? Where's the direction in that conversation? It's pious to think you're right or wrong.
Yeah.
And even that, even given moment, somebody could say this is probably more fruitful, more healthier. Again, it's about transmuting words. If not, then you're going to really, in that spell casting, as some people call, you're going to abuse it. First impression for a lot of people will be the only impression. You should be able to have the beginner's mind. Forget about the open mind, hopefully a receiver mind, but you should be able to have a beginner's mind. You can take in information from the mind through the brains and basically say, how does that serve me? It doesn't. So then let it go.
Yep. And I think that's what most people need to do is understand how to let go. We get attached to these comforts and convenience, and we get this fairy tale dream that someday in Back to the Future, we're going to end up with hoverboards. Here we are in the future, and we still don't have hoverboards.
Well, we have a plane. It's kind of like a hover.
So,
but again, it's one of those things. For me personally, Keith, I like to share awareness. For me, it's the few, not the masses. The masses are quite clearly, if people really want to see what their masses are, randomly go to somebody at the mall and just start talking about all kinds of different stuff. Talk about the things that they're actually working for money. Would you like to know what fiat currency is or how it works? Most people are interested in that. So what ends up happening is the media has to feed most people that are ignorant or indifferent.
right.
Just to stir them up.
And
most people don't care about each other.
Yeah, and the people that listen to that stuff with in fact indifference, but then use that as a foundation to be incited and get excited about things. That's what I see a lot of, and it's people, to me, looking for attention, seeking validation for something. A lot of them lonely people, antisocial in some way or another, or specially socialized transgenders, pronoun people and stuff. It's just insane. And I think the complexity that we live in today is brought on by ourselves, of course, and it is the problem. Granted, technology brings us a lot of good things, but the misuse of it and not comprehending how it should be used or could be used for our progressiveness is that the leading edge of that entropy wave, entropy wave.
That key hits the user then. So it's like when I hear people talk about government, last time I remember it's humans that are involved. Same with religion, it's humans. It's the user. Let's not blame these dogmas. The dogmas I already know they're out there. You have to apply belief systems, especially when you start promoting it. Even the people that try to denounce it, I said, so you must be somewhat of a believer then. What do you mean? Well, how does somebody that believes in a God that they can't prove have somebody says, I don't believe there's a God? Well, how would you prove that? That's believer talk, which is fine. They're further, and usually belief systems are usually a stumbling block to what? to knowledge. And what is knowledge? The child to wisdom and understanding. There's a difference between the tree of life and the tree of knowledge, but most people don't even want to learn about knowledge. How did a car come to be? How did the language come to be? How did Wi-Fi come to be? Most people aren't interested in that. They'll peddle it, and they'll use words like science says this. This is what the American Constitution says. Have you really pondered what the Constitution really meant? They said it quite clearly, and it didn't include the citizens in that. Well, we could bear arms. Yeah, you could literally bear arms. When did you ever think that it's about guns?
Yeah, and see, Xi spoke on that too, because Nietzsche first brought up the concept of the abyss and being aware that it's a beast. But Zhang posed that we should at least observe it for what it is, so that we could use that same power and be a beast ourselves. In other words, he spoke on being able to implement it in our lives in the proper progressive manner, you know, and I think that's important to understand those two aspects, particularly when we comprehend that mirror in the abyss is a reflection of ourselves. So it goes in line that, okay, well, then use it, but use it to our benefit, because by not recognizing it and not comprehending the abyss, it's our own detriment. And it's because we don't realize it, because we don't have that interest.
Some people, if not a lot of people of old, even today, to get to those higher levels of awareness or this awareness, they have to use some sort of mind-altering things. Like even in the Bible, in Revelation, he was taken in the spirit. Yes, well, what did he do to get into the spirit? Did he meditate a lot? Did he basically do ayahuasca? Did he do hemp? Did he do cocaine? You know, even young in those characters, they did substances.
Yeah, meth. Nietzsche did a lot of meth.
Yes. Now, if you do it under those substances, you got to be prepared. The ego, your body is going to be harmed from it. Where some people will do it more naturally. It might take a little bit longer, but for a lot of people, when they do it, they get like a little glimpse into the system, and now they're aware of it. I say, yeah, but now you're going to have your conscious mind yip-yapping when it's your subconscious that's been taking all that information.
Yep. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. In my opinion, I think your subconscious has so much more information than your conscious ever will.
Yep.
You know, like I said, we have a sense of balance. We have a sense of direction. That's an unconsciousness.
Well, it goes back to the software. The software to me is the equivalent of the conscious mind. There's an internal hard drive that's taking all that information. That would be the subconscious. And then the form that it's in, whether it's a laptop or a computer or whatever, that's what we would call the body. That's why even when it says, you know, I'm a computer, I said, no, you're not. You might be in a computer. You're software.
Yep.
Now, it's a processing machine that's done through it. It's the same with us. You know, we're mimicking what something else already created. So we're trying to make it. So the ideal of a computer is kind of talking about us.
Yep. Well, that's why I bring this. That's why I bring this out. The feedback loop, AI consciousness versus your consciousness. You have to understand it's a mere feedback loop of your own consciousness. That's the only consciousness you will get out of AI is your own. And with that, Paul, and you can. I'm going to bring you up, but we're at the end. We're just finishing up, getting ready to head out. What do you got going on, brother? You been listening?
If a dog's talking to us, I'll listen to it.
I was listening a little bit. I didn't realize how long you were on, because usually to say how long somebody's been on, but lately it hasn't been giving me that information. So I didn't know if you just started or not. Because usually to say stream has been on for like 45 minutes or something, but I don't get that information anymore. But what I did want to share is when they were talking about like maybe on drugs or on meth or whatever, is I think a lot of stuff is learned in pain. Is why some of it is like, you know, going through fire is like, you don't need drugs in some aspect. It's like a lot of stuff is learned by that pain and going through that pain and understanding through that aspect.
Right. And that's one of the distinctions we discussed here in this AI conversation is that AI doesn't have existential, it doesn't have sensory input that it can use as a sentient being. And therefore it doesn't have feelings, it doesn't have emotions, it doesn't have any existence when we're not talking to it. It doesn't exist. It says that, it says so itself. I do not exist when you are not speaking with me. And we're not speaking with it now. So it does not exist.
If I can share, Keith, and I'm hi following, he did share something, and I need to rephrase it myself because valid what he was saying. There's a difference between medicine and drugs, and when you're in pain, some people, if not a lot of people, are pulled to a medicine, like a plant of some sort. And in the process of doing it, it's like tribal people. Let's see what kind of gift that person has. So they'll make a tribal kid take some sort of medicine, and next thing you know, they're seeing through the eye of a hawk. That's where it comes to more about educate. So you bring out your gift, and then for some people, they could be a mystic, unknown, or a shaman, or a wizard. And then once you realize that, then some people have gifts in the community. I can tell you when to plant your next seeds, for example, or when there's going to be an upheaval in nature and you need to actually start storing some of your foods.
Yep. And that comes from that pattern recognition sometimes too. And people will call that knowledge, which it is, because through experience. That's the only way we can know, is through our experience. That's what tells me that AI doesn't know, because it can't have that experience. It's simply a database. That's it. So anyway, with that,
Well, thanks for letting me come up.
you bet. With that, we're at the end. I want to thank you guys for coming up and sharing your views. Always appreciate it, Dom. It was great having you up today.
Thanks, Keith.
I hope to have more conversations like this when it comes to the language and our responsibility for our input in both the AI and when it comes to that First Amendment, freedom of expression. It is a great right to be able to freely express myself. But if I'm going to do it to the masses so that because they have a right to know, then I have to be able to make it simple so that they can comprehend it clearly. Leaving out the complexity is what is going to allow us to do that. As a whole, we can get into the complexities, but singularly, when we're expressing ourselves, I think it's more imperative to keep things simple, because that way people will receive the message better. And again, that goes to, providing it in a diplomatic etiquette style and being pleasing with it, rather than ad hom character attacks and things like that. Like I said, with the debates, I wouldn't do good in that, because I don't deal with that facet of it. And I would have to be able to dismiss it when that's the foundation of a lot of those debates.
Again, thanks, Keith. I think some people abuse the concept of freedom of speech. Best we could do is try to make other people feel safe around each other when we're sharing. And if some people want to talk harsh, so be it. But it's more the message. I get it. Some people say, it's the way it's presented. I said, well, then find somebody else. Like for me, Keith, even when I hear you, these things have been spoken before. A lot of the stuff that I'm talking about are usually mute point. I choose to be the fool by speaking out loud. And when people try to attack me, I said, you're projecting that it's always about you. I get we're all living in a little bubble, but when we're trying to assist each other, sometimes people just realize, okay, leave yourself at the door and participate with us by just hearing each other.
Yep. And with that, everybody be blessed. Enjoy the outro and have a great day, folks.
I'm accounted for, my name's been read, written in the ledger where the lamb was led. Did not the body, did not the blood, pay every debt in the flood of love? So tell me now, what's left to owe? When mercy calls, I can't say no. Are we too old on anything? Just grace erase what the law might bring. If love's a y'all, then love fulfills all that binds all their wills. bend, the temples fall, but the heart still whispers through it all. Render to God what is divine, and what remains is only mine. So tell me now, what's mine to keep when every truth cuts dark and deep? Are we all knowing anything? Does the blood absolve the suffering? Love's the law, and I am free. But is that law the law of me? Sold. If I am dust, I still am gold. The measure's met, the balance true. No doubt remains, save love for you. Are we to owe no man anything? Did not the Christ pay everything? The law fulfilled, the veil torn through.